Good morning, everyone.
Great morning. Welcome to the CS4GA Summit for 2022. Pleasure to have you all here.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry, Brian.
Go ahead.
We're just super excited to be here this morning with everyone and to see lots of familiar names who are already here and others that I can't wait to be able to meet throughout the day. We have a really great day planned for you, and just I just wanted to say just a couple of things before Brian kicks us off. I want to thank Brian. Um, just really enjoy working with you, and so grateful to be able to collaborate with you and the CS for Georgia team as well, led by Ko Hassan, who is in the background. He facilitates CS for Georgia, and this is the CS for Georgia Summit. So kudos to him for his great leadership with the Collective Impact Initiative. And Brian, you also have a new counterpart. You want to talk a little bit about your new counterpart?
We'll get to introduce Levita in a little bit, but it's so exciting to have a team at the Godot now. Levita Williams is our new computer science program specialist. So you'll get to meet her in just a little while.
Okay, great. Throughout the day, myself, Brian, and the Constellations Fellows, who I hope you absolutely get to meet today, will be here to assist you if you have any questions. They will also be moderating some of the breakout sessions as well. Terry Foster, Sababu Barashango, and Yolanda Payne, if you all just want to say hello in the chat so that folks can know how to connect with you, that would be awesome. But this is the team of fellows who support teachers. They are super fantastic people to get to know. Please reach out to them if you have any questions or need any assistance. They would be more than happy to help you throughout the day. I'm also going to post a link to our FAQ page. If you have any questions, you can also refer to that page, which will also have the attendees guide. And one last thing, I know that many of you have requested a certificate of attendance. If you would like to do that, I'm also going to post a link to a Google form that you can complete. And if you just give us a few weeks, we will email you the certificate of attendance for this summit.
All right, so let's get started with the summit. The theme for this year is computing as a fundamental literacy. And the reason why we want to talk about that is because it goes beyond just becoming a programmer, even though that's a very important part of computer science. But it's something for everyone, for every single student in Georgia. And this summit, based on that theme, we have three areas of impact that we're going to address. There's the integration area of impact, where we're talking about integrating computational thinking or computer science across content areas, across all of your educational experiences. There's cyber awareness, because we know that cyber is something that everybody should have under their belt, whether they're going to become a cyber security professional or not. And then there's also AI and data science, two areas that are rapidly changing the way our society operates and functions. For each impact area, we will have a themed panel and then a couple of breakouts. So that'll be the form of the day. We're going to go, first we'll have our keynote speaker, and then we'll have a themed panel on integration, and then the breakout, themed panel on cyber, and then the breakouts, themed panel on AI and data science, and then the breakouts. Throughout the day, feel free to talk to each other in the chat, and also take advantage of our Expo Booths. If you look on the left side of your screen, there's an icon that says Expo. I think that's what it says. Yes, Expo. So a lot of our CS for Georgia partners have exhibition booths in there. You can go in there and see what they have to offer and how they can support you in your work. Also, there are several times during the day where we will use the networking feature. If you look again at your left side of your screen, there's a little handshake icon. It looks like a handshake. It says networking. During our lunch break and at the end of the summit, if you click on networking, it will automatically pair you with somebody else that's attending the summit. It's kind of like a speed dating for computer science computer science stakeholders. It's very cool. It's one of my favorite features of Hopin. So please take advantage of the networking feature during lunch and after the summit is closing. Let's see, what else we got to talk about before we get started? Some more housekeeping. There are some important links to share with you all. Links for the splash page, links that kind of give you all the information about what's going on in the summit and some of the presenters and things like that. You'll find that in the chat pretty soon. And also, we have a workshop tomorrow for an implementation workshop that we're doing, working with a few districts to help them develop their computer science implementation plan. We're using the CS for All script tool as our foundation for that workshop. If your district is interested in participating in another workshop, we have another one this summer, and there is a link to sign up for that on the Constellations page and also on the Georgia DOE page, and we'll share that with you as well. All right. Now, to kick us off, I have a short video that I want to share from our new mayor in Atlanta.
All right. Just before we do that, Brian, I forgot to say one other thing too. I really wanted to give a shout out to all of the teachers and educators who are attending today, taking the time to convene with us, and really, building this community is really the best part of my job, I feel. Building the community, being part of this community, and just really being able to support each other, even through these difficult times in the last couple of years with the pandemic, and figuring out how the best way to support our students in all of our schools across the state. So I just wanted to say thank you for being here. I'm again super excited, and thank you to Brian for all of your great work and leadership as well. I'll be mainly in the background today, so please feel free to reach out directly to me if you need any assistance. And just super happy to be here, and thank you for being here too. All right, Brian, I'm going to go ahead and pull this up for you in just a minute.
Hello, I'm Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's virtual event. If you're attending this Computer Science for Georgia Summit, then you understand the value of bringing a quality computer science education to Georgia students. Glassdoor, the website that offers workplace reviews, says 17 of the 25 highest paying jobs in this country require computer science fluency. This is concerning because the Georgia Department of Education says the number of APS students enrolled in computer-related courses is trending downward. So, the work that you and your collective are doing is vital. Studies show that when it comes to tech learning in high schools, all Georgia students may not have the same access, but efforts like yours can help us change that. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Excellent. Now, just a clarifying statement for that. Now, during the pandemic, the ATL participation in computer science did take a dip, but it's rebounding right now. But what is concerning is that while currently, according to the state report on computer science, 80% of the students in Georgia have access to a computer science, the foundational computer science instruction, but only 3.3% of the students are taking those courses. So that's the metric that we are paying attention to and that we want to address with the work that we're doing here. Now, before we get to our keynote, I want to have a quick word from our gold sponsor, Google, in the form of Shanika Hope.
Hi, I'm Shanika Hope, Director of Computer Science and Outreach at Google. As a former teacher and administrator, I know firsthand how vital the role of a teacher is in the lives of students. As we kick off this event, I want to thank you for your commitment to students across the state of Georgia. Even after everything you've faced in the last few years, You continue to bring computer science education to countless students across the state. Thank you for all you do each day and for making time to be here. I also want to thank the host of today's event, the Georgia Department of Education, Constellation Center for Equity in Computing, and CS for Georgia. Thank you for your vision and your continued support to this community of educators. Finally, we also would like to acknowledge and thank the other sponsors of today's event, the Cape Horse Center, Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, and the United Negro College Fund. Today's theme, Computer Science as a Fundamental Literacy, is both a visionary declaration and a call to action. When I think about the knowledge and skills needed to solve some of the world's most pressing problems and to succeed in the jobs of the future, it's clear that computer science must be accessible as a fundamental literacy for all. Georgia is already a leader in this space, thanks in large part to the hard work of those in this room. Google is committed to working alongside you to make sure all students have equitable access to computer science education. Code with Google is just one example of that commitment. Every year, millions of students access programs through Code with Google to help them get ready to find new careers and unlock opportunities in computer science and technology. Our commitment also includes supporting the work of local Georgia-based organizations and initiatives, such as CS for Georgia, Code House, Georgia State University, and Seismic at Georgia Tech, just to name a few. Google has been a proud member of the Atlanta community since we established our first office here over 20 years ago, and we're dedicated to working alongside you to ensure all students have access and participate in computer science. We hope you enjoyed today's event and get a chance to come by our booth. Now, let's get ready to hear from our keynote speaker, Dr. Christina Mccoon.
All right, as we bring Dr. McCune Gardner up to the stage. Uh-oh, sorry about that.
Okay, so Brian will be back on in just a quick minute there. While we wait for Brian to come back on, just wanted to, say thank you to Mayor Dickens and to his office for supporting computer science education, in our state, and really appreciate the support from Google as well. Next up is our keynote speaker, and both Brian and I have worked with Dr. Christina Gardner-Mccune over actually many years now, and I'm just super excited that she will be speaking with us today, and going to just give Brian just 1 second here to come back on. Let me just bear with us another minute or so here. All right, so while he's working on that, I'm going to go ahead and bring Christina on now. There she is. Good morning, Christina. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Oh no, this is a great opportunity, and it's like coming home, so it's awesome.
That's right. So, I just wanted to say thank you for being here, and I know that you and I, we've worked on lots of different projects over the years, and just super happy that you're here with us today, and just very appreciative of your time. Brian, I'm so glad that you're back.
I don't know what happened. YouTube kicked me out, I guess.
Oh, I see. I see. So I brought Christina on so that you could introduce her.
Well, yeah, I worked with Christina for 3 years now, I believe, from supporting her with her AI for K-12 initiative, of which she's the PI, to now partnering with her with AI for Georgia, where we're working to develop a curriculum for middle school artificial intelligence in Georgia. And what I've learned in that time period is that she's very passionate, and she's a very passionate advocate for teachers and students, particularly in Georgia, where she can claim her alma mater. Even though she's currently nestled in Florida, we know she has a special place for Georgia in her heart. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Christina, for joining us.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, Christina, take it away.
Okay. Are my slides up? There they are. Okay. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I think Brian took some of my thunder there because I was like really excited to be like, "Hey, I'm coming back home," and you know, I think Atlanta and definitely Georgia has a part of my heart. I spent the better part of almost 10 years of my life in Atlanta at Georgia Tech, doing my master's, PhD, and a postdoc at Georgia Tech. So it definitely feels like coming home. And I'm just so thankful that you guys have given me the opportunity to speak at this conference, and just really excited about the work that you all are doing. And so I'm gonna riff off of the conference theme this year, computing as a fundamental literacy, and really explore what that means to you all, and what that means to me, and what that means for our students. And so I am a professor at the University of Florida in the computer science department, and I am also, as Brian mentioned, co-chair of the AI for K-12 initiative, where we're actually trying to create guidelines for what students should know and be able to do with AI. So really excited to talk to you about both AI, but also just broader computing as a fundamental literacy. So I mentioned, so this is home. I'm just waving because we're virtual this year. So, but this is the College of Computing, where I spent many years in Atlanta. So I want to start by just acknowledging the fact that you guys have been amazing leaders in computing education for many years now. And so although we're only in the third year of this conference, the work that you guys have been doing has been long, and very varied. I love the vibrant teacher community you have here. That you guys have computing standards. You're one of the first states to do so, and not just student standards, but also teacher standards and certification. So really leading the way for other states to kind of pick up the mantle and run. And so I really appreciate that leadership, and just seeing how it's transformed. And now with the Constellation Center for Equity and Computing, just also continuing that mantle. So just really excited about all the work that you guys have been doing, and just celebrating you. And I echo everyone that's come before that says thank you for the work you've been doing over the last 2 years. I know it's been a lot, and burnout is high, but we appreciate you, and your students appreciate you. And hopefully I'll be able to highlight some of the stories of maybe former students to help you, encourage you as you go through this time. So computing is a fundamental literacy. I'm going to ask the question why, and you guys are going to help me begin to answer this. So I'll have a couple of these questions. So if you take out a smartphone, you can scan the QR code here, and be able to kind of submit your answers. And as you submit them, I should be able to see them on the screen here. So let's see. I'm going to do my own scanning thing to make sure that it's working. So the question is, why do you think computing is a fundamental literacy? Like, what's your personal belief about that? And you can enter, a word or a phrase, and it all kind of pop up here as a word cloud. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that. All right, it's everywhere. It's tech-driven, job preparation. It's everywhere, every career. Active producer, not just consumers. Absolutely. It's a 21st century skill. Yes. Yeah, pervades so many areas of our lives. Problem solving, employability, collaboration, like reading, computing is used by lots of professions. So I love this. And as you guys are submitting these, we're starting to see that 21st century skill is in the middle there. It's getting larger. So agreement there enhances computational thinking. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think as I was preparing for this talk, I told my husband, I was like, I'm preaching to the choir. What do I say to them? And so really excited to see you're in agreement there. All right. I'm continue to put these in. I can always come back here, but I wanna keep us moving. So a lot of the things that you highlighted came up nationally in the work that Rafi Santo, Sarah Vogel, and Dixie Ching did with their CS Vision work, where they were looking at the values and impact areas of CS. And many of the things that you were highlighting here were around workforce development and economics, also around technology, social, and scientific innovation, and in enjoyment. And as you can see, there's 7 different areas. And I actually, when I was looking at CS for Georgia, their statement of values, what I saw there was, equity and social justice, competencies and literacy, citizenship and civic engagement were huge, as well as technological, social, and scientific innovation. So I love to see the reasons why we're passionate about getting CS as a computational, as a literacy for everybody, because I think it really helps us think about how do we make that happen in our district. What does that implementation look like? And that was the work that Rafi Santos, Sarah, and Dixie were working on. So here's my take on it. As I agree with all of you, AI and really computing is ubiquitous, and I come from the standpoint of AI in some of these slides because I think we've already seen computing be ubiquitous, and I felt like that was kind of like 90s, early 2000s. But now what we're really seeing is within those technologies that we're using already, we're seeing AI being infused in ways that sometimes are invisible to us. It's in our GPSs, it's in our smartphones, it's in the applications that we use throughout the day. And so why do I think it's a fundamental literacy for all students is because computing is personal, right? We carry around all of this technology in our pockets, on our wrists, in our bags. It shapes how we interact with one another and how we experience the world. It's in our homes, in our cars, in our communities. And the fact that it's invisible is a thing that makes it easy for us to pick up to use, but also makes me concerned because I want to make sure that our students really have a fundamental understanding of what is AI doing? What is, what are the cybersecurity needs? What kind of skills do they need to have to evaluate the risk and concerns it may cause them, but also to be able to make decisions about how that technology is used in their everyday lives, from the recommendations that they see to how their data is being used in these smart devices that pick up their voice. And so I think it's easy for us to think a lot about the positive aspects of computing, and we should. But I also want students to be critical thinkers. And so CS is personal. Computing is personal. Computing is creative. For many of us, we start off our students in block-based programming environments for them to kind of learn to create without getting hung up in all the syntax. But we're now seeing people move in so there's several pieces of art here on this screen. One is art of sneakers that were digitally generated through using generative adversarial networks, so GANs, which are neural networks, as well as the one on the far right with all the pixels. And so we're seeing artists pick up AI and use it as tools to actually help them generate new forms of art. And so it's not just a matter of, oh, I need, AI to solve a problem, or I need machine learning to solve a problem. It's like AI can help me create and express myself in ways that make me feel um, uh, that helped me express myself in ways that I wouldn't have been able to do without this technology, right? And so these actually, two of these were actually sold as NFTs, on the blockchain. So we're seeing that AI and blockchain is another technology that's coming up, and that's really changing the way that we think about the art world. Likewise, Instagram did something very similar, right? It's changing who is a photographer and who has expertise to do so, and and basically everybody has a personal gallery that they can share. And I will say, some of these artists, these blockchain artists for NFTs, they actually have transformed in their careers into full-time jobs doing digital and generative art. And so I think this is awesome. They took a personal hobby and transformed it into a full-time career. So you can move from personal interest to profession. And a lot of them actually had data science and computing backgrounds, and they were working actively in the field before moving into NFT art. Um, as we mentioned before, it's AI and computing is in every facet of our society, from manufacturing to logistics to maintaining our agriculture, farming, soil quality. I live in Florida, so detecting harmful algae blooms is super important to make sure that we are actually able to go to the beach and keep our beaches safe for marine life and also for our tourism. That's a major aspect of our economy. But we're also seeing it being used in healthcare to, quickly. Like, it used to take days and weeks and months to sequence DNA, and now we're seeing in a matter of hours, we're able to sequence this young child's DNA to find rare diseases so they can come up with a treatment plan to save her life. So AI in computing is being used in very innovative ways, and so the skill sets that are going to be required of students to have, even if they don't go into computing fields, are very vast. So computing also drives job growth because of the innovation, and at the core of that is data science and machine learning. And we don't talk about it a lot, but now that we're in the midst of observing the Ukraine and Russian war, we're seeing that cybersecurity more and more is a skill set that we need our students to have, because it's the new weapon, right? It's the new thing that can be used to bring a country down. We're hopefully not really talking about nuclear right now, but cyber is a very very readily available tool for to be used against our country, and personally and also nationally. And so wanting to make sure that we as a nation are cultivating those skills in our students so that they can pursue careers in these fields, and also in their personal lives, right? Be taking care to secure themselves and their networks that they communicate on and store their data. Computing, as we know, is a professional tool. Many professions are using computing to solve problems, not just computer scientists, not just researchers. And so it's important for all students, as they go into the world, to have at least had a baseline understanding of data science, machine learning, AI, programming, computational thinking in general, but to have these new skills, because these new skills are part of the new literacy that they're going to need. And computing has so many societal impacts, both far and wide, and some that are immediate to us and some that we don't quite know about. And so we want to teach students to be able to evaluate how they're using computing in their everyday lives for personal use, how they're using computing and AI to make decisions about other people, and how they're using it to solve problems, and to really be evaluating, if it's being used for the benefit of all or only a son. And so, as we know, computing is driving our economy. It's a disruptive technology. We've seen that with Uber and how it's displaced, taxi drivers, and how cities are having to evolve. How do they use this new technology, because there's benefits to it, but there's also drawbacks, right? So there's job losses, there's need for refinement of new skills that lead to new careers, and in opening up these new careers, it's opening new opportunities for people to earn wealth, right? So a different way, the gig economy, and thinking about how people can actually earn money. It's not just going to a 9-to-5 job. It's giving people, artists, an opportunity to kind of make a living, but also have a job have time to do their craft and their art. And so it's also expanding the profession of people because it's making access to technology and information and educational training courses, all of that available to them now more readily. So we it's one of those things where we get excited about it, but we also want students to be mindful of the ways that it can be harmful as well as helpful, and also just be prepared that they need to be agile and nimble in their career, in their education, and know just because I trained for this thing, coming in college doesn't mean 2 years from now I don't need to continue upskilling myself in new skills to stay agile. So computing, I believe is a mechanism for economic advancement for all people. I think this is in one generation we can see a family move from low income to high income wage earners, and be able to help not only themselves but their families. And so it's really important that we ensure equity of access. And when I'm thinking about equity of access, I'm thinking about geographic access. You're making sure that we're pulling in rural, suburban, urban districts into learning about AI, and not and that everybody has an opportunity to engage with it. I'm thinking about socioeconomic. I'm thinking about racial and ethnic groups that have been historically marginalized in these fields. I'm thinking about differently abled learners, who may not learn like everybody else, but are truly capable, and we just need to find ways of providing opportunities for them to get access to computing education. I'm thinking about making sure that even within a district that we're offering computing, we're offering it at both high and low resource schools and communities so that everybody has a chance. And I'm a strong proponent of informal learning. So I'm really I really want to make sure that we're not just providing just formal opportunities for students to learn about computing, but they have these informal opportunities where they get to be a little bit more freeform and creative, and see the connections to their everyday lives. What skills do K-12 students need to be literate? Um, and so, often when I think about this, I start to think about, well, what are the technologies that these students are interacting with, and what do they know about how these technologies work? And so I put my line up here. It's the usual suspects. Instagram, they're not really using Facebook so much, but they're using Snapchat and TikTok. They usually have some type of smart device that they can speak to at home. And so, what do they really know about it? And most of the teachers that I've talked to, most of the students that I talk to, most of them think it's kind of magic. They even if they go, oh, it's AI, they don't really know how it works. And so it's really magic. And so I really believe our job is to help them understand, systematically how do these technologies work, so that way they're better able to evaluate the risk and also the benefits of these technologies. So we're going to do another one of these. So the question is, who was involved in the creation of Instagram face filter technology, right? So both the platform kind of thing, but also that the face filter. So I'll give you a couple of seconds. If you still have the app up, it should allow you to, it should just refresh. And so I'll give you a couple of seconds for you guys to answer, put in some responses about what your thoughts are. Okay, so right now, programmer and graphic designers are leading the way. All right. And the bad thing about this is it's 100%. So I don't know if one person answered or 20 people answered, and you all have said the same thing. So it doesn't give me that data. But okay, so it looks like we got some running neck and neck. All right. Graphic designers are starting to take the lead. This is kind of like one of those horse races. This is kind of fun. Um, but yeah, so most of you have picked, I think, almost every option that was there, with the highest being entrepreneurs and programmers and graphic designers. And you're absolutely right. These technologies, to create them, you need interdisciplinary teams that are able to look at the product from start to finish, from conceptualization all the way to implementation and then maintenance. And so the only one I don't have on here is product designer. I had product designer when I was going to do an Echo one, but I didn't put that slide here. That's the only one I didn't put because most of who's designing these are like programmers, and usually the entrepreneur is kind of like that product designer, but I will give credit for that because we're thinking about all the different kinds of people and all the different kinds of skills that go into making these technologies that we interact with. And when we just think about computer science and computing skills, there are so many areas of computer science that contributed to the making of Instagram and face filters. I like to give credit to the Instagrammers themselves because they actually have now started creating their own filters. But the Instagrammers who actually created their piece of artwork here, the machine learning engineer that created the facial recognition algorithms, the mobile app designer that actually created the overall application, the computer engineer or embedded system engineers that actually thought about how do we integrate in the camera into the app and make sure that we're getting the right resolution for pictures and that the quality is coming out good. We had user interface or user experience designers that were thinking about where should we put buttons? What are the kind of interactions we want people to have with the application that make it easy to use so that they'll come back? We have the graphic designers who were then using the tools that the machine learning engineers created to actually think about, okay, where do we put these bunny ears? Where do we put the nose? How do we locate those parts of the face and make sure that our filter always pops up in the right places? We have cloud and storage and service engineers that are making sure that the platform is up and running and available at all times. And then we have the mobile network carriers that are doing their part of this bit, right? So there's so many people and so many computing fields and backgrounds that are involved in just the making and maintaining of Instagram. I picked the simplest thing that I could pick here because I want to drive home the point that if this is what it looks like for Instagram and that mobile app, what does it look like for all the other devices that we're carrying around? All right. So there's often multiple stakeholders, many of which we just talked about. So what I wanted to see is what do you think their goals were in creating the technology? So I'll give you a couple of seconds to put in some answers here. Okay, it's up. Entertainment, yes. Entertainment was probably the primary goal in addition to money, right? The entrepreneur was thinking about how can I make money? Solve a problem, networking, profit, increased engagement with the app, absolutely. Surveillance, oh, that's a good one. People to stay connected with with pictures and videos. So it's about connectivity and social interaction. Increased use of the app. Machine learning. Creative voice. I love that. Keeping users interested, absolutely. That's a big part of the the business model. Awesome. So attract customers, right? Right. So not only it started off as kind of like people collecting data, lots of data. When they created when they originally created a lot of these social media apps, they were thinking about kind of providing a service to kind of connect people, and then they realized, oh, we have to figure out how to monetize this so that we can stay in business and continue to pay the engineers. So finances came into play here, but what I like to talk to students about is get them to think about what are the competing goals of all the stakeholders that are creating these technologies, because this is something that needs to be negotiated and help people see from different perspectives about what do we need to do to create this technology and what do we need to be thinking about. So from a programmer perspective, they might have been focused on providing functional application with as few bugs as possible, right? So just how do I get this thing done? It's a technical challenge, right? UX and UI designers might have been thinking about, how do I create this application so it's easy to use and it gives a good user experience. Graphic designers were thinking about, how do I create and how do I help people create and transform their images? What tools do I need to give them? Business analysts were thinking about increasing engagement, which you guys already highlighted. Entrepreneurs were thinking about maybe creating a platform that allow people to share their lives in images and videos. Marketing and advertisement, we're thinking about advertising dollars. Machine learning engineers were thinking about, how do I develop this facial recognition technology to be good and not be really heavy when it's running on mobile devices. Network and cloud engineers are thinking about, how do I keep it up? So some of these I said already. New ones here that I didn't have before around security. Application security engineers are wanting to ensure that the mobile application and users are safe, right? They're developing safety and security protocols, privacy and security protocols to make sure that the data that people are sharing is safe. Network security or monitoring to make sure no malicious code is being embedded with these uploaded images and links and things like that. And data scientists are thinking about, how do I create dashboards and models for content creators and business analysts to know how are we doing, and what's getting the most traction here? Is it my stories? Is it my single post? Like what's getting the traction here? And how do I monetize that? And so creating tools for them to analyze their data. And so this has gone from like from an individual perspective, most people are just kind of posting up, right? But as you start to become maybe a social media influencer or thinking about, how do I get money off of this, data becomes more important. So these skills of data science become more and more important for them to be able to analyze, where should I invest where should I invest my time in content creation? And on the business side, it's like, who should I invest in, as far as like, who's going to get the most viewership for the market that I'm interested in, and help me earn the most new customers, right? So that we start to see data science becoming a fundamental literacy for people who are just trying to do social media influencing, right? It's not just about sharing their opinion. They have to be very business minded and number minded. So we talked a little bit about the positive and negative impacts of the technology, and that is about entertainment. So like, what is the impact? We think about these applications and we think, oh, it's just going to bring joy because I put these fun little bunny ears on. But there's also negative impacts, right? When we look at what was happening in Hong Kong a few years ago, when they were trying to track down people that were involved in the protests, they started using their social media posts because they already had cameras that were tracking in the city. They were trying to use their social media posts to find them and put them in prison. And so something that I put up to be fun now becomes something that becomes imprisons me, right? So thinking about, what are the policies and civil liberties that should be there to protect you as you share on social media platforms. Something we don't often talk about are the environmental impacts, like how much resources, energy, how much does it cost to train a machine learning model and retrain them? Because these things need to be retrained over time to keep them accurate. How much does that cost? What is the greenhouse emissions on that? How much does it cost to keep the data center cool, excuse me. And so these are costs that are hidden, that we don't think about, but they do have societal impacts. We often think about the big polluters, but this is also something that we need to think about as impacts. We do as well when we think about Instagram and things like that. We often do think about cyberbullying and catfishing and mental health and these standards for beauty, and what's appropriate, and language tracking. And so these can sometimes have negative impacts. We've seen suicides happen because people have been bullied online. And so these technologies that we use as fun also have downsides, and we need to figure out, how do we help people deal with that. And all along there's giving, and then we're trying to give more rights to the user. So giving them more rights to have security settings about who can see their images, who can comment on them, who can download them, and what data we are sharing when we share our images. So we're making users more conscious of what data they're sharing and what information they're sharing about themselves. And with this, they need computational literacy to be able to do that fluidly. Um, So as we think about these technologies, really what we're looking at in the broader ecosystem, when we step back from not just looking at the technology itself, we're just looking at a democratization of computing technology. Before, to be a photographer, you had to get a job, and get paid for your photography for it to be seen, either as a journalist, or in a newspaper, or or you were an artist, right? But now everybody can be a photographer. New careers are being created because of these platforms, right? Content creators is now a career, right? A blogger or a vlogger or a social media influencer. These are careers that did not exist before we had these social media platforms and some of these technologies. And it's not just social media. Any technology that we're creating is going to create new jobs, and we don't know what those jobs look like. But having computing as a fundamental literacy will prepare them for those jobs that are to come. So takeaway, computing technology is being used by everyone. AI and data science and cybersecurity are the infrastructure on which new technologies are being built. And so it's really important for students to have awareness about what those technologies are and how they work. A wide range of computing professionals are needed to develop and maintain these technologies. Decisions are being made during the making and also the usage of these technologies that have widespread effects, both near term and long term. And we want our students to be able to evaluate those impacts personally, professionally, and societally. We want our students to make ethical decisions and responsible decisions in their use of technology. And we want our students to be able to consider the world from multiple perspectives. So to me, computing is a fundamental literacy, and at the heart of that are these new technologies that are coming into play. And I'm not focusing so much on blockchain here, and some of the virtual reality and augmented reality, but those are on the rise as well. And students having a knowledge about what those things are and how they work is really important. So, what are the literacies? So I've been mentioning data science, and I've been mentioning AI, and I've been mentioning cybersecurity. So I want to review that a little bit. So worldwide, countries have been working on getting computing into K-12 for the past 30 years, right? Like, oh my gosh, this has been a long journey. We've been working on this for a long time. And so in 2022, as I mentioned before, computing literacies need to be more than just computational thinking and programming. We've got to be advancing into some of these, into data science and AI and cybersecurity. What we're seeing worldwide, on the K-12 AI level, because this is the group that I'm most familiar with and I work a lot with, is we're seeing countries such as China and the UK, Thailand, and EU countries and Canada begin to write curricula and start to work on standards for what K-12 students should know about AI. And so the work that we're doing with AI for K-12 is thinking about what that looks like in this country, but in addition to a large host of other NSF recipients, some of which might be on this call, and teachers that have worked with those projects are thinking about what does this look like in our classroom. So this is moving forward. Right now, to date, the only country that actually has standards for AI on the K-12 level is South Korea. But this, it's nationally. I think we started the AI for K-12 work in about, I think, 2018, and at that time there wasn't really anything nationally, coming from the White House about the imperative about AI education. But this came out in 2021. The White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, actually 2020, and then the law got passed in 2021, around aligning our education, both our K-12 and our undergraduate education, to future workforce needs. And so more money is put in to be able to fund that, because we recognize that not only do we need our students to be good at math, science, and engineering, but we need them to have these fundamental skills in AI. We're hearing more and more, again, with the Ukraine and Russia war, around, the need for to secure our cybersecurity infrastructure. But the U.S. government has been thinking about this for a number of years, around how do we upskill our workers to make sure that we have the right kind of we have enough people to help secure our cyber infrastructure. So this is a fundamental need just for our national security, but also for personal security, because all of our devices, our smartphones and watches and everything that we have that's connected to a network, it can be compromised and can be used to spy on us. And so we need to be securing our data and not just relying on someone else to do so. So I know there are, for some of you, you already are teaching, if you're teaching exploring computer science or CS principles, you've already been exposed to different areas of computing, and we want to continue to use those courses to expose students to different areas of computing, but we also need to be thinking about what are the other areas of computing that we might need to look at, because for each area of computing, there's different kinds of people that are attracted to them. And so if we're looking at how do we fill the gap in openings for jobs in computing, we need to be thinking about computing as a wide range of careers, some of which are primarily programming, some of which use programming to achieve other goals. And so here I just have some of them: human-computer interactions, embedded systems, graphics, quantum computing, simulation and modeling, ethics, right? So all of these are now becoming more prominent careers in that you can apply for this job, not just a software engineer and a programmer. You can apply for a specific job in one of these areas. And so being able to help our students be aware that computing is more than just programming, I think is really important. We see a large number at University of Florida. We have a human-centered computing PhD program. Likewise, Georgia Tech has one as well. They actually was the first one in the country to do so. And what they saw was more women and underrepresented minorities found a way to connect to computing through HCI because it was human-centered. It was focused on how do I make technology better for humans and what humans want to do. And so there was that personal touch that people were connected to. And so depending on what kinds of problems people want to solve, there's a different area of computing for them to get involved with. So I know you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, computing skills are changing. This is too much. There's too much change. I feel like that sometimes, even on the undergraduate level. When I'm teaching, I'm like, each year, every 2 to 3 years, I'm changing out the new web framework and I'm learning a new framework. And it's like, this is a lot of change. But I think if we can teach our students to be agile and we can also be agile, we get the fun of learning something new. But I also think that, Georgia, you have been thinking about this, even as you created your certifications and your expectations for computing teachers. You were thinking about this from the beginning, right? You didn't say they just have to learn programming. You're thinking about how do we prepare students for these emerging technologies. You know that it's going to be emerging, and how do we educate them to become responsible digital citizens with safe, secure, ethical, and professional digital behavior? How do we positively impact underrepresented populations by incorporating, different and diverse instructional strategies to increase their engagement and intention to continue advanced studies in computing science? So you guys have already been thinking about this. And I love the K-8 standards, because they don't just say what we want students to know, they define who we want students to be: empowered learners, digital citizens, knowledge constructors, innovative designers and creators, computational thinkers, and career explorers. Like that's amazing, the amount of time and effort I know you guys put into creating these things to be able to position our students to be these kinds of people in the future is really gonna transform the state and also computing professionals as we move forward. Joe Bowler came up with these 4 keys about data science. It's about what are the keys for students to understand data science. It's around formulating statistical and investigative questions. It's about collecting and considering that data, being able to analyze that data, and interpret and communicate about it. So that's those are the data science skills that go a little bit further than data literacy skills that we have in the 21st century skills. So what I see is that data science, cybersecurity, and AI are really pushing and expanding the literacies in the 21st century skills of information, media, and technology, and putting a new layer onto what those skills look like, a new dimension. For cybersecurity, as you already had in your K-8 standards, you had this idea of a digital citizen. Those line up really well with some of the goals that you already have. So it's not anything new. Their computer systems things already align with the Computer Science Teachers Association standards and also what you have in your standards. And so the new parts are these security things. These things that are uniquely security around the security triad, network security, physical security, information security. And so this is a small little bump in skill set here. When I look at my own work with the AI for K-12 initiative and the 5 big ideas, what we want students to really understand are the 5 aspects of AI, which we define as perceptions about how computers see the world through sensors, representation and reasoning, which connects back to computer science because that's about data structures and algorithms. Big idea 3 is around learning. How do computers learn from data? So that aligns really well with a lot of the data science literacies. The 4th is around natural interactions. How do we get computers to interact naturally with humans? That aligns well with also thinking about human-computer interactions and then all the different modalities that we're now using to talk to computers, to type into computers and things like that. And the 5th one is around societal impacts. How can AI impact society in both positive and negative ways? And that's already part of what you want your students to be doing. So what I'm saying is there's a small bump and it's just a different flavor that computer science how we're defining computational literacy here as we include these 3 new disciplines. As we think about the AI-enabled workforce, what we think about are these 3 different kinds of learners. There's end users, which we all are, right? Anytime you're using any AI device, we're an end user. And really what we want them to do is just be comfortable with using AI-enabled technologies, understand the types of AI tools that they can use to solve problems, and evaluate societal and personal impacts of AI systems. On the second level, we call that the AI power user. There, what we're thinking about professions that use AI to solve problems. And so they need to be able to use AI tools and applications to solve problems in their own domain. They need to be able to evaluate purchasing decisions. Like, there's so many different types of AI, applications out there. What's the right one for the people in the skill set of the employees that I have at my company? And then being able to use and promote ethical and responsible decision making and accountability with AI. And that third layer here is around AI professionals and researchers. These are the ones that are innovating the new algorithms, creating the new systems and tools that end users and power users will use. And so when we think about it in this way, we can see how computing as a fundamental literacy that includes AI really affects every kind of user that we would have out there. So who are we looking for? So when I was thinking about this, of course, we want everybody, right? We want everybody to come in to have computing literacies. But sometimes that's easier said than done. Sometimes we don't know where to look. And so what I wanted to do was think back on my own aspirations to become a computer scientist. How did that start? What did I look like in middle school and high school? And would anyone have thought, oh yeah, she's going to be a computer scientist? And I probably would tell you no. I was president of my student body. I was super social. I was doing a lot of leadership positions. I was a cheerleader. I was in peer leadership. I did all these things. And I wasn't really doing anything technical until my junior year of high school. And at that point, I had the opportunity to sign up for a programming class. And I don't remember, and I meant to ask my mom before I got onto this to do this talk, is to ask her, like, did I ask to be in this class? Did you ask to be in this class? Did the school counselor think about this? How did I get into this class? But I somehow got into a programming class, and for me, I fell in love with computer science. And it was Visual Basic. I fell in love with computer science because I could create things. And at that point, I was really, really interested in astrology. And I was doing a lot of calculations and sometimes getting them wrong and having to do them all over again. And so realizing I can use computers to actually do these calculations for me, right? And so that kind of catapulted me into thinking about computing as a career that I can because I can create things and solve problems that are important to me. And that kind of led to the rest of my trajectory, going to Syracuse, going to Georgia Tech. And while I was at Georgia Tech, really thinking about how do we use computing technology to help students learn. And then in my postdoc, thinking about how do we create computing educational outreach opportunities for students. And so what I want to do is tell you, you can hear, I'll send you a link. I just did a podcast, so you can hear more of my story there. But what I really want to focus on are some of the students that I worked with in Georgia about 10 years ago, and what did they look like then, and what do they look like now? And so one of our students, she came in raring to go. She had already been involved with robotics. She had already been doing research at a university, and she was interested in being the next roboticist. And so we basically just opened up the lab at Georgia Tech, and she built a kind of like a robotic hand kind of glove. Kind of think about like the Nintendo Power Glove. And so she ended up going to Georgia Tech, both for undergrad and her master's, and now she is a software firmware engineer at Microsoft. And so when we think about that, what we see is she was definitely more a hardware level interested programmer there, but she also liked to build. Another student who came in raring to go and wanting to do computer science was Druval Darji. We call him Drew. He ended up going to Southern Poly. He came from, oh, I don't have his school there. Do I have his skill? No, I don't have his high school there. I was trying to call up people's high schools. But he ended up going to Southern Poly, majoring in computer science, and then off the bat went directly into a startup. And this startup is actually working on privacy and security. And now he's a hiring manager, and he's a senior software engineer at that company, doing UI architecture. So he came in, and I think his project was like he wanted to create a quadcopter to be able to that was going to be able to collect data. So his interest in surveillance through quadcoptering and now to privacy, security, and governance is actually kind of funny and ironic. Another student, Kamari Wright, he was again one of those students raring to go. He was at Westlake High School. He was captain of his first robotics team, and he went to Ohio State and majored in computer science, and now he also is working at a startup called Greenlight in Atlanta. And I don't know if you noticed, but a number of the students that I'm going through outside of Madeline actually, came back to Atlanta. So you are not only are you creating the future computer scientists and the future computing professionals, they're also coming back to Atlanta and giving back to Georgia. And so you're raising your own tech infrastructure in the education that you're doing and you're providing. Amanda Holloman was a little bit different. She had taken, I think it was computing in the modern world, and she really wasn't interested in computer science. She really wanted to do more electrical engineering and do stuff with her hands, so maybe mechanical engineering. And so she was interested also in helping develop assistive technologies because she had a personal connection to people with special needs, and she wanted to make sure that she could create technologies like that. And so she ended up winning, I think, second place in a competition that was sponsored by AT&T that we were participating in. And she's decided, okay, I'm going to take another course in CS. I'm going to major in CS. And not only did she major in CS, she ended up doing 2 research experiences for undergraduates out in California, also in Louisiana. And now she is a PhD student at University of Alabama with one of my former PhD students from UF. So it's just amazing to see how these students grow from, I'm not sure I want to do computer science, to thinking I can now be a professional, or I want to be a PhD and do research in this. But she had curiosity, and her curiosity is what drove her, and her tenacity is what pushed her. And these 2 students are amazing. So on the left here is Allison Perry. She was a really, really good golfer in high school. She was also interested in business, so she was part of the business clubs at her school. And Jaleesa was into fashion design. She had taken some programming, and she was at Westlake in their math science magnet. And we approached Jaleesa. I remember seeing her face and saying, "Hey, we have the summer program. We're interested in recruiting students to be a part of it." And she's like, and we are like, "What are you interested in?" She said, "Fashion." I said, "Well, if we can connect fashion to computing, will you come?" And she said, "Yes," because she was planning to go to SCAD. And so she came, and she ended up creating what was called the Cozy Coat, because the room that we were in at Georgia Tech was super cold because it used to be an old server room. And so it was always cold in there. So every day in the middle of the summer, she'd come with a heavier and heavier coat. And so she decided she wanted to make a heated, stylish jacket. She went on to create this jacket in the summer, several prototypes, and then continue it on to fall and spring, and competed in and won some science fairs in the district, and I believe she maybe went to state with it. But she also was able to go to Grace Hopper and present her research on this, and she actually won the undergraduate research award, poster award, even though she was a high school student. So that inspired her to think, maybe I can do this, and so she began taking more computer science classes. And so she ended up being a software engineer at T-Mobile in Alpharetta. And she went to University of Georgia. And I believe she actually dual majored, I think, in fashion and computer science. That part it is a little bit flaky for me right now. But what we see are these students who, when given the opportunity to connect computing to their passion and connect computing to their interest or their curiosity, we see them developing, taking the time to take future courses and to pursue careers in it. So I only did my little small part of offering the program. You guys did the part of teaching the classes and continuing to stoke that flame within them. Torian Harris, he was actually a really good artist. He was always doodling and things, and he had taken some classes in graphic design and animation and done some stuff in Flash. But he came to our program and he was like, "Oh, I don't know about the programming part. I really want to design." And so he ended up going to SCAD and doing game development and game and interactive media design, and then went through a boot camp program at Georgia Tech for, I think it says, 24-week program at Georgia Tech, and then went on to go work, do mobile application, and now he's a field engineer at Microsoft. So we see these pathways where we plant seeds. It builds students' confidence to think that they can do the next step in that career path. And so all I'm asking is, let's continue to plant seeds. One last student here. This is one of my students actually from South Carolina. So when I left Georgia Tech, I went and started my first faculty position at Clemson, and I did a 15-week after school program where I think we were meeting 4 days a week with the kids. And Tonya was one of the students there, and she was super bright. She was, my husband, I think, calls it creative mischievous. So she would get into things if she wasn't challenged. And so I kept challenging her to do more and more with coding. And I think at the time we were using Scratch and App Inventor. And so I just would challenge her. Well, I recently went back to South Carolina to that after school program center and found out that she had, she majored in computer engineering at Claflin University, and she just finished an internship last summer at NASA. And if you look at her career path, a lot of it, NASA was her first career in the field. Everything else was outside the field. So we need to be careful when we have students, and I know we have some higher ed educators on the call here. We need to be looking at our students and figuring out, how do we get them computing internships? How do we get them research experiences so that they don't have to wait to their last year before they graduate to get an internship? Because you can see she was working as an assembly line worker. She's working at Barnes & Noble. There's another one where she was working 2 jobs at the same time, as a fry cook at Wendy's, right, or line cook at Wendy's, right, and so she also created her own business to do t-shirt design, to figure out how to make ends meet. So we need to figure out how we support our students when we get them into these programs so that they can stay. And I know the Mile High Fund that's being run by I'm going to glitch on her name. Please forgive me. It'll come back to me in a second. But that's specifically looking at how do we, fill in the gaps for students so that they can take these internships. So what I want to point out here, and I'm nearing the end of my time here, is that all of these students were part of the same program. They had very different interests. Some were musicians, some were wanted to do electrician work. Some were like just really socialites. They just wanted to I think they would have been happy having their own TV show. Um, they were aspiring business leaders. They were aspiring engineers and computer scientists. Not everyone chose the path of computing, but we planted seeds that for some of them, they're coming back to and they're using that in their field of study, in their field of choice. And so we are changing the face of computing and what innovation looks like. And so I just want us to be aware of what I call hidden figures, right? People that are really actively involved in sports or leadership or just things that don't look like tech, and make sure that we invite them in, because many of the students, when I went back and looked at their applications for the program, had been involved in a lot of these other things. And some of them had taken computing courses, some of them hadn't. So we need to make sure that we're continually providing opportunities for students to do things both inside and outside the classroom for them to discover, how computing might be useful for them. And I also want us to keep in mind, like, computing is a collaborative field, right? It's very applied, like we're solving problems. And that's what kids need to know is I'm not just going to be sitting behind a computer coding, but I'm actually going to be able to impact the world and impact people in the world who use the products that I create. So I'll kind of wind it down here, but I wanted to end close to ending because there's two more people I want to highlight. Some of the when we think about the future careers in computing and computing literacy and what's available, we think about what's available now, but we need to be thinking about what students can actually make available based on their passions. So I want to highlight here Candice Mitchell-Harris. She actually was the founder of the after school program that I end up carrying on into summer camp, into a full year after school program. She wanted to give back to students in communities like hers. And so I assisted her as I was finishing up my PhD. She was running this after school program and I was helping her out. And then I ended up running it as a full-fledged program in the summer, and many of the students I just introduced you to were a part of that program. But she had a degree in computer science. She graduated, went to work at PepsiCo, and then came back, I believe, 2 years later, and did what Georgia Tech, I can't remember what Georgia Tech was calling it at the time, but it was like an incubator space for tech entrepreneurs. She came back and she had a passion for hair and hair care, and this is at the height of women thinking about Black women thinking about natural hair and how can we put better products in our hair and pick the products that work for us. And what she has applied is basically AI to make hair care recommendations easier and faster and more accurate for people. And so she's been an entrepreneur for the past 10 years doing this business. And so that she connected her tech skill with her passion and a problem in her community. And so we need to make sure that we're making sure that everybody has a seat at the table to learn computing, because there's problems in each of our communities that we're passionate about that other people in other communities may not be passionate about. And so we need enough of everybody to solve the problems that they're passionate about. And so I wanted to highlight this because it's it's coming full circle. And the last one is Dr. Joy Bulawani. She also helped found one of the companies that with Candice in hair care, and I think Candice is on her second company now. But Joy is a serial entrepreneur. Even as an undergrad, she is already coming up with entrepreneurial ventures. She just finished her PhD at the MIT Media Lab. And during that time, she launched the Algorithmic Justice League that's looking at how computing and AI and facial recognition in particular impacts people of color. And so she did a lot of work to bring up to companies the use of facial recognition, because she was actually trying to just do a creative project where she called, I can't remember, it was a mirror, and she wanted it to she wanted it to recognize her face, and it wouldn't recognize her face only until she put a white mask in front of her face. And so she realized then there was a problem. And so she kept testing out all the different algorithms and all the different technologies that are out there, and then writing to the companies to let them know, hey, this isn't recognizing Black faces. We need to be careful about how it's being used in applications. And so she and other members of the Algorithm Justice League have been doing tremendous work. So if you haven't seen Coded Bias, definitely see it. But she is also a Georgia Tech grad. So I will leave it at that. Well, no, I have some parting words. I want to jump down really quickly. I have some parting words as a call to action for you all. There's a ton of tools out there for students to learn about AI, and I will leave it to some of the other panelists and breakout sessions to do that. My goal was just to kind of paint the picture of why computing is a fundamental literacy and how AI, data science, and cybersecurity work in. So Georgia, you have always been on the leading edge. What will be your next step? I know many of you wear many hats, your teachers, your school counselors, your administrators, your mentors, encouragers, and coaches. So what I want you to think about is with one of your hats, how can you use that to help make computing a fundamental literacy for all students? So school counselors, you are influencers and positioners. I want to point you to resources at NC WIT, Counselors for Computing, and also their Advising for Future Ready Career Workshop webinar that they have available online, and the Georgia Godot dashboards. Brian has done an amazing job about collecting data on your districts so that you can really see who's in computing in your district, who's missing, and so that when you're making recommendations for students to get into classes, you have the data at your fingertips to do so. And so I have a picture of that on the bottom right-hand corner. And I want you to be really intentional about recruitment, and that NC WIT Counselors for Computing will help you do that, and to begin thinking about how do you put together a strategic plan to broaden participation in the computing courses that you offer. And hopefully, how do you grow that program? How do you work with the teachers to grow that program so that you can offer more computing courses at your district? Teachers, you are innovators, you're influencers, and you're encouragers. My call to action for you all is think about how do you diversify the computing content that you're teaching. Maybe you can use computing as an opportunity. You can use AI and data science as applications for stuff that you're already doing in your regular computing class. But this is an application that allows them to see what does a string look like? When would I use this in data science? When might I use this in machine learning? Image processing, right? Like, what does this look like on the scale of machine learning? So giving them opportunities to apply their skills in computing in these application areas of CS. Collaborate. Think about how you can partner with core disciplinary teachers in your school to integrate an aspect of computing into their course. Even if it's just a day or it's a module or something that allows students to be able to learn, oh, wait, this is actually kind of interesting. And so that they're more likely to enroll in your courses and to pursue out those opportunities. And the question I want you guys to ask is how do you personalize your content? What are the interests of your students, and how can you connect those interests to computing? Because as you saw with many of the students that I pointed out, they had varying interests, and we found ways to connect it back to computing for them to to stoke the flames of passion and interest. And then look at what your flavor of CS is that you personally connect to, because students vibe off of your energy. If you're energetic and passionate about it, they get energetic and passionate about it too. Technology support and media specialists, you guys are inspirational. That one of my favorite places to be is the library. And so my call to action for you all is think about how can you come alongside your teachers and support them. Seek out PDs to learn more about computing resources that you might be able to offer in the library that students can come and do in their free time. Look at informal learning opportunities for students. Maybe post those up and tell students that come into your space about those. And provide opportunities for them to explore. And you should be asking yourself, how do we want to see growth in our school? What kinds of things are students in your school interested in? And how do you want to support teachers in your school? For administrators, you guys are infrastructure builders. Georgia Godot has a ton of resources. And as Brian said right at the beginning of this conference, he said that I think tomorrow actually, they're doing the scripts workshop from CS for All around the districts for thinking about how do you create an implementation plan. Get your district involved if you're not doing that already. And if you've done it already, it's nice to go back and reflect on that implementation plan, because each time you come back, you work on a new part of it. And then look at how you fund ongoing professional development and creation of resources for AI, data science, and cybersecurity in your schools with your teachers. Think about how you can foster those cross-curricular projects so that students get an opportunity to see computing not just in a computer science class, but as it is a tool and a resource for advancing their learning in their STEM and other core disciplines. And think about how you can collaborate with companies and industry and community partners to make sure that your students have access to different opportunities in computing. And so my questions to you are to think about what kinds of CS opportunities will students find in your district to develop computational literacy so that they can see themselves. Who's on your team and who's missing? And so with that, I will charge you to think about what your next steps will be in making computing literacy a foundational literacy in your district, a reality, not just a vision. Thank you all so much. And hopefully we still have a little bit of time, but I may have used up some of my time for questions here, but I will stick around. But thank you all. And thank you for all the tremendous work that you've been doing to bring computing to our Georgia students.
Thank you, Christina. That was phenomenal. Like I want to applaud that. That was a great speech, great talk. There were so many different components that I want to take and capture, even down to that last part when you were giving the call to action. I want to take each one of those slides and share them with those groups that you were reaching out to. As a matter of fact, lots of folks in the chat were clamoring for your presentation. They want your slide deck. So
I will PDFify it and get it into the chat and get it to you all to send out.
There were several questions. We are running short on time. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll drop those in the main events thing, and you can kind of answer those.
Okay, perfect.
And we can kind of move on to the next one. Thank you so much. That was
right. Well, thank you all so much.
We learned a lot. Like, thank you for being one of your students again. I'm glad to be a student.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to move on to the next section. So following that, first of all, let me say that, again, that was a phenomenal presentation. Co has been putting in the chat several links, one to the agenda, which is on the splash page, and also on the reception area. And another one is to the summit links, which are very, very helpful. There are toolkits in there that you can use to help to build your CS program. There's lots of really, really good stuff in there. So check out the links for summit participants that Co is putting in the chat. Next, like I said, we're going to move into the integration segment of the summit. But before we do that, we're going to have our first raffle. We have 3 of these today. Our sponsor has given us some items to raffle on, and Levita's going to come and do our raffle for us. Levita, are you back here in the backstage?
Hey everyone, so good to see you all here today. I am Levita Williams, the new computer science program specialist that gets to work with the great Brian Cox at the Georgia Department of Education. We are thrilled to have you here today. Brian is going to be spinning the wheel. We have 3 raffle prizes. We'll announce one now, one right after lunch, and then one at the end of the day. So thank you to our sponsors for providing these prizes. As you registered, your name was entered into our drawing. And Brian, I'm going to let you spin the wheel to see who will be our winner. Our first winner is Jen Norton. So Jen, if you are here, please place "I am here" in the chat, and we will connect with you so that way you are able to receive your prize. Jen, are you here? All right, Jen is here. Congratulations, Jen. We will make sure to connect with you so that way you're able to receive your prize. Again, I'm Lavita Williams, the new program specialist. Please let me know if there's anything that I can do to try to help you support your program. Brian and I are thrilled that we now have a team so that way we can continue to carry this torch for computer science education. I am now going to have the great pleasure of introducing Shayna White with the Kapoor Center. Shayna?
Hey, good morning, everybody. How are y'all doing? All right, let me see. There we go, perfect. Really hard to follow up Dr. Christina, but I will try to, and mine will be brief. We are one of the sponsors of the summit, and we are glad to be here. We are a philanthropic organization that is actually based out of Oakland, California. I am the Senior Associate of CS Equity and Justice Initiatives for the Kapoor Center, and I am based in Atlanta. I was born and raised here, a product of DeKalb County Public Schools, and I actually taught for a number of years, close to 13, in Gwinnett County Public Schools. So I'm very familiar with Atlanta and the state of Georgia in a general aspect. So the thing that we at the Kapoor Center are really focused on is racial justice, and we feel like technology and computing are a part of that puzzle piece. We've had so many racial justice issues after the George Floyd murder, and we feel this is a great opportunity, a prime opportunity to realize how can we leverage computing education and technology to fight for racial justice for historically marginalized groups, for equity, and also for our nation's future. And so Dr. Scott, the CEO of the Kapoor Center, brilliantly coined this quote to just understand the levity of the moment and understanding, hey, like we can use computing education to kind of shift things and really move things forward for all people, especially those historically marginalized groups. So our new vision for CS education, we really want to focus on those historically marginalized students. So we're talking about Black students, we're talking about Native American students, we're talking about Latinx students, we're talking about students with disabilities, we're talking about girls or non-binary students. So all of those groups that historically have been marginalized in our K-12 education system, we want to make sure that we are creating equitable computer science at the Kapoor Center and helping districts fulfill this kind of definition of what we think equitable computer science is. We want everybody to have opportunity and access to quality CS education. We have had such big pushes for access and opportunity, but we want that access and opportunity to be quality. We want students to experience success in CS classrooms. We want them to be affirmed and cared for based off of Dr. Geneva Gay's culturally responsive teaching strategies. We want students to have agency and leadership. We want teachers and schools equipped with resources that they need to be successful to deliver quality CS education. And we want CS classrooms to be places where we challenge the status quo, where kids are able to disrupt and learn techniques to disrupt racism, inequities, and other systemic barriers that they are facing or their communities are facing. So right now we are a working group member of the CS for Georgia Coalition. We also are board members on the NSF grant that CS for Georgia entered for racial equity. We have a partnership with Early County Schools, which is in Blakely, Georgia. So it's right South Georgia near Colquitt, that we're building a K-12 CS program in their entire district for the next 4 years. We started this year. We actually have a CS night that we're hosting down there with some swag from Google. We have some people coming to shoot rockets. The kids are going to show some of the projects they've been working on, but pretty much get everybody in the community in Early County galvanized around CS. They were recipients of one of the Georgia DOE's 25K grants for implementation of CS, and we're helping them along with that process. We also support Georgia Tech Constellations and the work that Lynn Diaz and the crew at Constellations does with resources, for example, helping to sponsor this summit, offering any other resources and connecting with the vast network that we have at the Kapoor Center to help move the equity needle as far as CS education is in the state of Georgia. So right now, we are actually looking to partner with 2 to 3 more districts in Georgia. We have really not very specific criteria, but general criteria. We would like the student demographic population to be 60% student of colors or non-white students. We would also prefer to work with students that come from low socioeconomic backgrounds and have a high free and reduced lunch population. And we also are looking to work in rural districts in Georgia, also near the areas of Augusta, Columbus, Valdosta, Albany, and Macon. So if your district kind of fits in these parameters, we'd love to have a conversation with you about how we can support your districts in its efforts in getting K-12 computer science across the board within your district. The things that we offer and that we're doing for Early County right now, we actually do teacher professional development. I actually coach the teachers in Early County. They're teaching the current IDT or IST course. We also get them external PD support. So they're working with the Code HS platform. So we have a rep with Code HS that works directly with our teachers at Early County. I meet with the teachers on a monthly basis, and I've actually visited Early County 3 times just to make site visits, to meet the students, to meet the teachers, have that kind of like rapport, to understand that this is a partnership and a collaboration, that we're here to support any of their efforts that they have. We also are supporting with their district-wide implementation strategy, deciding what their course offerings are, the sequence, connecting them with any additional partnerships that are external based. We have the HYPE program that's based in Atlanta that works with Black and Brown girls, getting them into coding, Black Girls Code, all the other organizations that we have connections with. We try to get them also into the schools to support with after school programs. We also do research and evaluation of our partnership. And then we also offer financial support to the districts that we work with. So we help them buy equipment. We help them host CS nights like we're doing next week. So a lot of ways that we come in and help districts to kind of get to where they want to be as far as their K-12 CS implementation. So if any of that sounds appealing to you and you kind of meet the parameters of the standards, I would be the person that you contact. I'm pretty much running all the CS equity initiatives for the K4 Center at the K-12 level, especially those based in Georgia. And so my contact information is on the screen. The website is there. You can go back to our website and see a little bit more about the K4 Center and what we do. But we would love to partner with 2 or 3 more districts in Georgia like we've been doing with Early County this year and broaden our scope in Georgia to help support Brian at the DOE, as well as the Constellations and all the other groups, Google as well, that are working with Georgia schools to help make computer science more equitable, accessible, and quality for all students. And I have the pleasure, I think I went fast enough to make up the time. We are going to have an awesome panel about integrated computing with Lauren McGough from Georgia State University as the moderator, and I will turn it over to her.
Thank you so much, Shayna.